Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is but one God. I thank Him for all of the teachers and prophets and messengers He sent into the world to guide humanity. I am eternally grateful for His intervention in our affairs in the person of Master W. Farad Muhammad, and for raising up in our midst a man that I believe to be the long-awaited Messiah and the exalted Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I will be forever grateful for the man that has become my teacher in a musical sense and in a spiritual sense, a man that I affectionately refer to as my maestro, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I just want to first say how honored and thankful I am for this opportunity to share some of what I've learned in studying this instrument, the violin, studying music, studying classical music, studying art, studying the creation of God. Sister Deborah, who posed the question to me, why would the Honorable Elijah Muhammad want his ministers to know music? I spent the past week thinking, reflecting on that, and I think it's an outstanding question. I wanted to share a little bit about myself first, as I lead into just trying to answer that question and saying something on this short video. I began studying the violin when I was 7 years of age. My mother and father put the violin in my hands, and the instrument I immediately fell in love with. I fell in love with being able to articulate myself through music, through art, through creativity. But growing up as a black classical musician, a black violinist, I never saw another black man playing the violin. I rarely saw other black persons, women, or Latino or brown people playing the violin in classical music. And around the age of 16, a year where very many transformative things were happening in my life, I actually began to lose interest in the instrument. I also play several other instruments very well professionally, and I kind of lost interest in the violin from some of the challenges that I faced as a black classical musician. I would play in orchestras where I would be the only black or Latino musician in the orchestra. It was like that all the way through college, even in the professional arena that I play in now. And so at 16, I was really kind of going kind of wayward. And one night I sat down in my home, the home of my father, and he, as growing up as a young man, he would have us watch the weekly lectures of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on public access television. And from as young as I can remember, I would watch this man with a bow tie preach like church, talking about God and scripture. And I don't remember much of what I would hear back then. But one night I sat down to watch, and this man that would preach had a violin in his hand. And he was performing the concerto that I was learning at the time, the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. And for the first time in my life, I saw another black man mastering this instrument. And it was like, I've heard him say, it was like love at first sight. He said love at first sight is when you have something in your heart that you long for, and you see it in your heart, you see it in your mind, and when you encounter it for the first time in reality, that's love at first sight. Well, seeing the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan performing with members of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra in an orchestral setting, the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, it was love at first sight. And from that moment, 16 on, I pledged myself to be both a spiritual and an artistic student of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and to, in whatever way I can, help him to further his mission, which is the mission of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, to uplift humanity. And from that time until now, I remain a student of his. I've had the honor, the privilege to be in his company, to be taught directly one-on-one by him, both in the technical musical aspects of studying the violin, but in studying the technical aspects of the violin and music, that is our doorway into the spiritual and theoretical aspects that are in music and in creativity. In our lessons, our student enrollment, part of our student enrollment includes the actual facts. So we study the distance of how fast sound travels, how fast light travels, all of these technical aspects, because they help us to unlock the spiritual aspects that are in lesson number 1 and in lesson number 2 and in the problem book. So the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan has coached me, has trained me, has guided me in such a way that I have never had, and I will never have, a teacher like the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So Sister Deborah's question to me is a question, a topic that I've heard from the moment I set foot in the mosque. I've heard it in different forms, and of course I couldn't hear directly from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but I had heard early on that, I was told, that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad wanted his ministers to have some understanding of colors, music, and medicine. And I've heard different people say that to me in different ways, but for the purpose of this recording, I'm going to say it like that. That the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad wanted his ministers or his representatives to have some understanding of music, colors, and medicine. And when I began to study music in a spiritual sense, it's one thing to study the instrument from a technical standpoint, and we can learn notes and phrasing and fingerings and articulation and learn all the musical notation that there is to learn, and I can learn concertos and sonatas, and I can perform in string quartets and orchestral works. All that is good, but how do we take our music and our art to the next level? And so I began to study music from a spiritual, aesthetic point of view, because I wanted to know, why would the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad want his ministers to have some understanding of music, colors, and medicine? And music is one of the most fundamental parts of creation. So when you think of a child being conceived in the womb, and at that point where the sperm meets ovum and electricity is present, life is present, motion is present, one of the first organs that are developed in the womb of that new life is the heart. And it's the first sound that we hear that lets us know that life is present. So when we go to the doctor and the doctor puts the device on the womb of the mother-to-be, and we hear that sound of that new life, that new heartbeat, that's the purest sound in creation, new life. That's music. That heartbeat is a rhythm, a rhythmic pattern that tells us that life is present. So what the musical artist does is he takes rhythms, he takes frequencies, he takes notes, and he shapes them in such a way that what he creates is designed to touch the ear and the hearts of the people who he or she are sharing their art with. And in my studies, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he said in the How to Give Birth to a God lecture series, that the ear is the organ that leads to your submission. This ear, this organ that Allah God put in us, that is a direct connection into our brain. So as I'm speaking or playing on my violin, and as you are listening, the sound of my voice and the words that leave my mouth travel through the atmosphere, according to our actual facts, at 1,120 feet per second. And they travel on sound vibrations, on waves. And when those waves come from my mouth and strike your ear, inside your ear is your eardrum, and that drum begins to vibrate, motion. And in the vibration of the eardrum, it creates electromagnetic impulses, electricity. And that electricity sends signals into your brain, and your brain begins to break down what I say and how I say it. If I'm speaking in English or French or Spanish or speaking through my instrument, your brain begins to interpret what I say. So the musical artist has to be able to transmit from his instrument or his voice what they want the audience to receive. And that should be the understanding and the direction of our new educational paradigm, of our nation, of our understanding of the lessons. That's how I see the lessons. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said to me, when he spoke to Muhammad School of Music, he said that in the beginning of the mission of Jesus, Jesus gave his disciples very direct instructions to go not into the house of the Gentiles or to go into any other people to share his teachings. He wanted his teachings specifically for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So that was how Master Fard Muhammad brought the teachings to us through the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He didn't want what he was being taught to be shared at that time with the other peoples of the world, but his focus was solely on our lost found black peoples of America. But then there came a time in the mission of Jesus when he instructed his disciples to take his word, to take his assignment to all the peoples of the earth, all those who were lost, all those who have fallen from humanity, who have fallen from grace, which is the whole of humanity. And I believe that that's where we are in this day and time right now. What we have from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad that is being articulated through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is a universal message. When you say the word universal, it means it's applicable to everything in the universe. So our mission, our message is not just for black people in America or in the world, but it's for all people. It's for Latino, it's for Hispanic, it's for Asian, it's for Indian, it's even for Caucasian people, because the whole of humanity has fallen. And what we have to do is know how to take our teachings and articulate it in a way like music, so that when it leaves our mouth or our words or our writings, it travels and it touches the hearts of those who are in need of that healing. And I'm running out of time, but the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad also mentioned colors, because colors are like music. So just as I mentioned that sound, each note coming from the violin or the piano or any instrument is a sound vibration. This string, which is the A string, is a frequency that vibrates at 440 vibrations per second. That's what creates that note A, that I tune my violin to, that the orchestra will tune to, that allows me and the orchestra who will back me up to play together in harmony. And of course, there's nothing like hearing an ensemble playing out of tune. Well, colors are like that as well. Colors are light wavelength vibration vibrating at megahertz of vibrations, whereas this A, the note A, will vibrate at 440 hertz or vibrations per second. Light is megahertz, gigahertz. You have gamma rays, X-rays, microwaves. These are all light frequencies vibrating at thousands of millions of vibrations faster than they do through sound. That's what creates light. And so even though I may be speaking and sound may leave my mouth and travel into your ears at 1,120 feet per second, light or color travels at 186,000 miles per second, significantly faster, letting us know that what a person sees has a faster and more profound effect on them than what they hear. And then the third science that he wanted his ministers to have some understanding of, according to what I was told, was medicine. Because all of what we are trying to do with the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is to offer a healing to humanity. And so as a doctor, and I'm not a doctor, but I've been healed by very capable doctors, and in being healed by them for the illnesses that I suffered from at different points in my life, I studied how they healed me so that I could know how to use my skill, my art, to heal others. And so a doctor assesses the symptoms of his or her patient. And then based on the symptoms and based on their critical analysis and their study and their scholarship, they provide a prescription that will heal that individual. And that's what we have to do, is know how to assess the condition of our people, of humanity as a whole, and then use our teachings from God himself. That's something, when we reflect on the belief that we hold that Allah God appeared to us himself. And I heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, or I read once, where he referred to classical music as the music of enlightenment. Well, what did that mean when he said that? And what did it mean to me when I read it? Classical music. Well, if you think about classical music, are you thinking Mozart, Beethoven, Vivaldi, Corelli, Tchaikovsky? Even though this is an antiquated musical art form, but think about and study what was taking place at the time when these composers were creating music that would last for 200 and 300 years. See, Europe was in what was called the Dark Ages. And it was the Muslims from North Africa who went into Europe through Italy and Spain, bringing enlightenment. That's what the word Renaissance means. Enlightenment. They brought science. They brought mathematics. They brought running water. They brought electricity, and they brought art. They brought classical music. So the music that came from that experience of having the influence of Islam in Europe was what sparked the Renaissance, the music of enlightenment. Well, here we are in America in the presence of God himself. Not a prophet or one that he sent. He came himself and brought something that would spark an entirely new renaissance in this country and for the world. And so what we do and what we are trying to create is an entirely new understanding, an entirely new way of existence. And so I've gone over time, and I want to once again thank Sister Deborah for inviting me to share just a few words. This is a subject that I've studied, and of course I could get into the scientific aspects of music. I can get into the cultural aspects of music, the historical aspects of music. When I'm in New York City, as I am right now, I spend my summers in New York. As my daughter is a pre-professional ballerina, she's training at the American Ballet Theater. And as she trains, my time in New York City, I spend studying, reading, writing, practicing, preparing works that I'll perform in the next weeks and months and leading into the fall. I study very heavily the life of Beethoven. There's something about his experience and my experience that I've always gravitated towards. But this time is very special to me because this is a period of growth for me as I'm constantly growing. And so I have a lot to share. And of course, there's the other aspect of study, which is the technical study of a musical instrument, which if you're going to study an instrument, it's imperative that you have a good teacher. I can't do that through this venue, teach you how to play the violin or the piano or any other musical instrument. Of course, you're welcome to come to Buffalo or come to New York City and visit me or Muhammad School of Music, and we can train you in the technical aspects of mastering a musical instrument. But I'm always open to sharing what I've learned. And I've learned a lot, a tremendous amount, from studying under and with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the other instructors that he's guided me towards. The people that he's sent me to and guided me to that have also shaped my understanding of not just music, but understanding of how to use my own personal art form to help our people. And so I want to thank everyone for taking the opportunity to listen to what I have to share. And I hope at some point to be able to share more and just bear witness to the presence of Allah God in the person of Master Fraud Muhammad and his messenger in Christ, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and to bear witness to the beauty and the majesty of the wonderful teacher that I've been given in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I want to thank everyone for listening as I greet you with the greeting words of peace that we say in Arabic, Assalamu alaikum.
Drop Squad!
I just like the sound.
First, let's start with the knowledge that you get in these colleges and secondary schools, making slaves and tools. And some fools really think that they getting it. Go out into the world, still see that you unfit. This education ain't elevating, it's decapitating and castrating the whole nation. So serving your role in society, start climbing to the top, still only see their feet. Your talent becomes a resource for the ruling elite. They use you up, put you out, replace, repeat. The education for domestication posits certain skills and information. If you ain't here, incarceration. The school to prison pipeline is what you facing. We need our own teachers and our own schools, our own curriculum and our own rules. Stimulation and education. Cultivate your skills with information. Inspiration, transformation, then concentration. That God power will demonstrate. Teach. Educational leadership. And Louis Farrakhan, leader, teacher. Man, get the knowledge, gain the wisdom, then you understand. Educational leadership. And Louis Farrakhan, leader, teacher. Man, get the knowledge.
Farrakhan, the leader, teacher, and guide, in servitude of his people and Allah. His selfless actions and love is our reward. With this teaching, my pen is mightier than your sword. Bad day is here to even the score. Monty is here to win the war. The squad is dropping knowledge, meteor. Just sit and listen to these words I implore. Empower my people through perseverance and humility, getting the wisdom and understanding so I can teach my seed. I have educators throughout my family tree. They're trying to take us out by any means. What I'm telling you is that we're a dying breed. A message to my black people, we gotta change the ideology. That if it ain't right, it ain't right. It's time to fight for your life.
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us that he who gives you the diameter of your knowledge prescribes the circumference of your activity. Educational leadership, and Louis Farrakhan, leader, teacher, man. Get the knowledge, gain the wisdom, then your wisdom.